Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Scott Feinberg with The Hollywood Reporter, and I'm very excited to get another chance to see these guys who have had their movies been out for a while, and that's why it's extra nice to see so many of you come out to see it again or for the first time or whatever. It's really holds up, and we have the whole gang here today. So, very lucky. So, to begin with, I would like to bring out Oscar winner Holly Hunter. Another guy you might know from one medium or another, Ray Romano. The leading lady, Zoe Kazan. And I think we'll bring these two out together. Co-writers, Emily V. Gordon and Kumail Nanjiani, also the lead. Sure.
Oh my God, look at this.
We'll stand too. We will also
Thank you.
stand.
That's so lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow.
You do not see that at every screening.
No.
That's pretty cool.
You don't see that at the national anthem.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Just immediately.
Ray, this is not the time to like espouse your political views.
I'm just stating facts, that's all. I'm not...
Well, thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for coming. And Kumail, can we start with you, please? How, I think back in 2012, did the idea of taking such a personal part of your and Emily's life and making it, the idea of turning it into something beyond what you'd already lived through, what was the origin of that?
I think, we met Judd Apatow and he wanted to work with us in something. And at that point, I'd sort of been doing stories from my life in stand-up.
But not this one.
No, not this one. Although I was going up on stage during it, and I would go up on stage and be like, just so you know, full disclosure, my girlfriend's in a coma right now, but we're gonna have a good time, and nobody had a good time. Everybody was like, why are you here? It's Friday night for us. You're in hell. Keep your hell to yourself. But I at that point, I was like, I think that this is a story that's about all the things that are important to us. And it's only happened to us, so if we don't tell it, the story won't get told. And Emily was a little more reticent at that point for us to tackle this, but I really was like, I wanted to start feeling confident enough to start writing it. And then Emily and I had a talk about it, and she sort of thought about it before deciding to.
And I guess that leads us to Emily. Emily, can you, what were your reservations and how were they overcome?
I think my reservations are more that it's just a very personal story, and it is retackling something that was so overwhelming for us in so many different ways. Felt like a too big of a project to kind of take on. But I think when I just kind of thought through it, I thought this will be a really good experience no matter what happens with it. I think it'll be good for the two of us because as much as we tried to talk through that period of time, there was a lot of it that you don't dig into the details of every day unless you're writing scenes about it, really. So I highly recommend that if you've been through anything traumatic.
Yeah, meet up with Judd Apatow. He's a local comedy producer.
Local. That's technically true.
He's got a YouTube series coming out soon.
But I do. So my reservations were more like I also knew I wasn't as nervous about tackling as I was about it being a thing that people could. So much of our business that would then be out there. And I think sometimes you just have to kind of dig in anyway because it is a story that we wanted to tell. And so we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And now here we are.
Right. So logistically, how did it work? Would you divide up the story into sections? Would you sit side by side? How did it come together as a script?
Yeah, we would sort of be in the same room and put up, the little index cards and figure out the scenes and then divvy up
Yeah. We would not sit in the same room to write. I think that is, if any married couples that are also writing together, don't do that. Or maybe do that and see what happens. I don't know. But we would take the different scenes and say, okay, I'm going to take these 3, you're going to take these 3, and then we would, after writing them, we would pass them to the other person to rewrite, and then pass them back for rewriting. And a lot of really fun stuff came out of that because often one person's perspective on what an event that happened was entirely different than the other person. So a lot of that we ended up folding into the script because it's not just one person's story.
I don't want this end of the panel to feel neglected, but I want to just do a couple more about the foundations of this before we go further, because I think it's so interesting. I mean, Kumail, this started coming together before Silicon Valley, before, you know, I think that brought you to your largest audience up to that point. Were you always under the impression from Judd or anyone else involved with this that you would end up playing yourself?
I mean, that was always the plan from the beginning. Judd likes to work with people who sort of kind of do everything, you know? So he wants to work with people who will write and then act and stuff. So you're right. I mean, we started sort of working on this before Silicon Valley, but I think we were waiting for the script to get ready, but also get to the point where somebody would give us money for a movie that I could be the lead of. But having someone like Judd really helps, you know. I don't think we would have been able to get funding for this if it wasn't Judd being like, hey, I vouch for these people. I think that I put my name on this. So that was really, I mean, we owe Judd forever.
Even after Silicon Valley, like just the way that the world is right now.
That's right.
The elevator pitch of our movie is not an easy sell.
Yeah, it's like we have a movie. It's about a Muslim guy falling in love with a white American woman while she's in a coma, and it's a comedy.
Who wants to bid first?
So Zoe,
and it's set on Mars, so it's going to be a $200 million movie.
Zoe, how did you first hear about their crazy story and you know, the idea that you might be stepping into it with Kumail, who's obviously lived through it, but you've got to now channel Emily.
Right. Yeah, well, it was all the news on the Rialto. You know, I auditioned for it. I came to this project in a very normal way. I think I had read the script, and Michael Showalter, our director, as you reminded me on this very stage the last time we were here, I had no memory of having coffee with him, and Kumail reminded me that I had, in fact, had coffee with Michael before I went in for my audition.
Whoops.
He's so memorable. It was a really amazing script, and I don't get to read a lot of things that move me on the page, that I also have access to playing a part that I would want to play. Like, a lot of the times when I read an incredible script, it's like, oh, do you want to come in and be this person's secretary for 3 lines? So I was pretty stoked when I read it and very excited to get the opportunity to go in. So I really prepared. An actor prepares, and you know, it worked out.
How does one prepare aside from the script in this case? Were you able to, you know, find out anything further about what these guys had gone through, or?
No, I watched a lot of YouTube videos of Kumail's stand-up.
And you also watched YouTube videos of Emily.
I did. I watched YouTube videos of Emily talking.
Various web shows that you can look at online.
You know, but mostly, actually, weirdly, I mean, I joke, but no one laughs, but I joke. I felt like actually less preparation might be better in this case, because I knew that they were going to have us improvise when we came in. And I felt like, okay, I need to know my lines really well, and I need to know what these scenes are really well. But I'm gonna try not to overthink this. I'm gonna try not to plan anything, which is funny because it's something that we talked about during the actual filming of it. That sometimes having an idea for a scene is the least productive thing when approaching a scene.
I think a major, you know, moment for this movie must have been when Ray and Holly signed on, and I want to understand how somebody with a little indie movie can kind of win your interest and involvement. What was it that sold each of you on this project? Maybe we can start with Holly and go to Ray.
Well, I mean, Judd Apatow has a weight, in the movie industry because of the quality of his work. And I had seen This Is 40 and thought it was kind of like nothing I'd ever seen before. There was something original about, and I didn't know when I saw it that was his family, that he was married to Leslie. Those were his 2 kids, because the translation was like, I felt like it was nothing I'd ever seen before. The relationship that Leslie had with the children it seemed like, wow. It was like those are her kids, and they were. But that doesn't always work.
Right.
In fact, that rarely works. That the kids were so talented, and Leslie could bring herself to the screen the way that she did, and it was so funny. So, I mean, for me, Judd was like, he was a wow guy, immediately. So that, got my attention. And then I read the script and thought it was also had this kind of strange otherness that felt real. It was like, okay, that's real. Whether I know that this is a true story or not was beside the point. The script itself, there was a quality that was like, dyed in the wool. It went into the DNA of the script that felt like I didn't know it, but that it was real. And so that was the initial, jolt.
Yeah. Ray, you actually go back a ways with Judd, right?
Yeah, Judd, the first time I met Judd was at the HBO Young Comedian Special. We were both on it together in 1992. 1992, did you hear that? Yeah. Those of you who remember, who saw that probably didn't hear that, because you're as old as I am. But yeah, I saw him do stand-up, and the first time I saw him do stand-up, I thought, this guy's going to be a great producer. I'm gonna get a lot of mileage out of that joke. No, but that's where I knew of him, and we kind of knew each other. We never hung out much after that, but I know he was a fan of Everybody Loves Raymond, the few times I would run into him. And then this script came, my agent gave it to me, so I knew Judd was involved. I had never heard of Kumail at that time, and they said, Kumail Nanjiani wrote this script, and I didn't know who he was. And my kids knew. My kids immediately said, Dad, you got to do it because he's cool and you're not. And you got to, yeah. And then I knew Holly was attached. Oh, I knew Zoe was attached too, and my kids knew you from Ruby Sparks. I know you've done a lot more, but that's what they knew you from. And then I knew Holly, Hunter, and I just thought, this is how I gauge every actor that I'm going to act with. How scared am I going to be of working with her? I'm going, all right, it'll be pretty scary, but not as scary as Gene Hackman or Peter Boyle. Yeah.
What did you say, Peter Weller?
Peter Boyle. Oh. Peter Boyle.
I mean, I love Peter Weller, but I was like, Gene Hackman and Peter Weller.
No. Although I'd be scared of Peter Weller. But then, I met with them, and I met Holly at the table read for the first time. And yeah, it was kind of like a no-brainer.
Kumail, I was impressed to read that, the commitment, even though you would essentially, in a lot of ways, be retracing your own steps with this movie, the lengths to which you went to prepare in terms of certain study with others and of other material. Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah,
I'd never taken an acting class until a couple of years before this movie, and I'd done 2 seasons of Silicon Valley, and I was like, if we're ever gonna get a chance to make this movie, I want to go into it feeling like I know what I'm doing, like I have the tools I need. So I started taking acting classes, and before my acting teacher, her name's Myra Turley, she's fantastic. Before I ever showed her this script, I told her what it was about. So I'll tell you, I did every scene where someone's talking to a coma. I did Awakenings. I did Fisher King. there's a lot of movies where people talk to someone in a coma. So I did, and I did. I also did a lot of like romantic movies. Like I did. I sort of did When Harry Met Sally and all of that, because to me, I just wanted to be prepared going in. And then part of what I realized doing this movie was you wanna prepare and figure it out, and then kind of forget it when you're there, and trust that the stuff that's important will be in your bones enough that it just comes out. So.
Do you know that that's actually what Stanislavski said on his deathbed?
He said.
He was like, I've been teaching, it's true, he was like, I've been teaching or apocryphal, but probably true. He said, I should have been teaching everyone differently all these years. I should have been telling them, do all the work that I tell you, and then go on stage and forget everything I've ever said.
On his deathbed?
Yes.
Huh, so Stanislavski took him his whole life to get to that. And I made one fucking movie.
And stayed really humble too. That was what's so good about it.
That's probably the coolest thing about me, is that nothing about me has changed. This water isn't cold enough if somebody. But I learned that actually, working with Zoe was very helpful, because there was one scene I remember that because it's a low budget movie, the schedule would change, and on a day we had like 40 minutes extra, and Mike was like, hey, we should just get this scene, and I got really scared because I felt like I hadn't prepared for that scene to be that day. And then I was talking to my acting person, but also to Zoe, and they were just like, Zoe was just like, just talk to me. And I was like, oh, okay, right. And that's sort of what I learned during the whole thing, is like I prepared.
Just talk to people.
But just talk to people, and everything that's important will hopefully come out.
Emily and Zoe, I want to ask, once Zoe had been cast, what sort of interactions did you two have to kind of debrief each other?
This is the first time we've met.
Yeah.
Sleepovers, a lot of sleepovers where we braided each other's hair. It's such an interesting, it's something I think people ask about a lot, and it could not have been less strange. I think it's something that maybe could have been strange, but we met, I think it was right after, as soon as you'd been cast, we kind of met up, and we just realized that we're quite similar. And I think you kind of got from the beginning that no one wanted you to do an impression of me, because that's a waste of an impression, frankly, because no one knows who I am. And that you're an amazing actress, so part of your job is to kind of create this character based on what's on the page and what's kind of with you. So, and you'd kind of said you feel like we were the two mommies of this character. Yeah. And I think that's exactly what it was, is that we felt like together we were kind of caretakers of this version of Emily.
Would you add anything to that, Zoe?
Yeah, I think it was wonderful to have an ally on set, and to feel like, I forget who, but recently when we were doing one of these, someone was saying, like, I think Kumail was saying, like, how wonderful it was to have Barry and to have, like, the people that were behind the monitor. And for me, having Emily behind the monitor, like, watching and sort of like being a second pair of eyes for me, it gave me an enormous sense of relaxation on set. And also we, I think, both advocated for Emily's point of view when the other person couldn't be there. Like, we were sort of co-captains.
So as much as this is a love story between Kumail and Emily/Zoe, it also, I think, is equally a love story between Kumail and Ray and Holly and your characters, and that's an unusual dynamic. I wonder if either of you had encountered this before, and also in working with Kumail, who I know has this certainly background in stand-up and improv. Ray, you come to the movie with that as well. Holly, I don't know how much improv had been something you had done before, and I want to just ask you both about that dynamic of working with Kumail on this.
Improv is something that as an actor you will do improv at many points in your life. That will happen. I mean, it might even happen regularly before the cameras roll, or as the cameras roll, before action is called, you'll improv the beginning of the scene, or it's not a totally foreign landscape for me as an actor. I mean, I was probably more anxious about that before we actually started shooting. Once we started shooting, I went, well, we're acting. I mean, it's an actor's job. The thing didn't feel foreign to me in that way. But I did think that the whole idea that I found enticing, really kind of an arresting thing, was that relationship, that it was a love story between two parents and a future son-in-law who we didn't know that seemed to be in jeopardy. But that love story was so kind of multi-dimensional, and it had a richness to it that I thought that I just never really seen before, never been part of it before. That was a new kind of piece of drama in a movie that I thought that really kind of excited all of us to be part of that and to be discovering it on film. Not that we never really talked about how exciting that would be, but I think that it did excite all three of us, that kind of adventure. And that I also think that all three of us relied on an intuitive feel for it. You know, how it was gonna unfold was more intuitive and less talky. We didn't really discuss it. It just kind of, but it did kind of unfold as Mike Showalter was rolling from one take to another.
Yeah, well, I think the interesting and unique thing about this film is it's not just a love story between them and a love story between us. There's so many relationships that get served, and even in a short time, you know, you with your parents, you with your parents, me with you, me with her, you know, her and I is the correct way to say it?
No, she and I.
Oh, you and I thought you were correcting my vocabulary.
No,
Yes.
I'll do that later.
Yes, that's true. And yet, and none of it feels short, or it feels just right, and that was the amazing part about this movie. And then also, to me, it's like, it does deliver a message without, that's not the goal of it. The goal of it was, I think this would have worked if you were an Italian and she was Jewish, because, or anything like that. Because if my wife, if I was Jewish, my wife's parents would have disowned her too, because the Italian, it's the same, you know, it transcends cultures and everything. It's just about how love wins over all of it.
Yeah, one of the things that was really moving and unexpected to me after the movie came out was I talked to a reporter at like a LGBT publication, and that person was telling me about how they felt represented by the story, and that was a very unexpected thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing we talked about a lot, is like when you get into a romantic relationship, you're not in a relationship with that person, but with them, their families, all the baggage they have, everything they bring, whatever medical stuff they've got going on. You're in a relationship with every single part of that, and so often in movies, relationships are boiled down to like, do we think each other are pretty, and do we have a nice banter with each other? And it's not as realistic as what our actual lives are.
I also thought that it was interesting with the script and as the story and as we were shooting, that Kumail had the unusual opportunity, and certainly for any actresses in the room, it's a really, really rare opportunity for an actress to get to be in a movie where you also have a love story with your parents, you have a love story with your lover, you have a love story with your work. And Kumail got to express that, because we also see Kumail's love story with his job, with what he does for a living, what he wants to do for a living. There was that kind of desire that was unfolding as the movie went on. And I thought that the dimensionality of and how the movie parsed itself out from like spending time with each of Kumail's loves and developing each of those stories was like a science project that was successful.
I have to ask Kumail and Ray about what I think for me is the hardest I've laughed in a movie since The Zipper and Something About Mary, which is the 9/11 exchange, and Holly as well. How did this happen?
I wrote that joke. No. I had nothing to do with it. It was on the page, so ask him.
If I could first say, don't sleep on Holly's reaction during the whole thing. The next time, please watch it again. And the next time you see it, keep your eyes on Holly. It's tremendous to watch her work in that scene.
Did you know it was
It's
coming?
tremendous. So,
There's a should I tell them that secret of that scene that nobody knows that we had so much debate about? That none of them.
It's not
No.
a fun secret, really.
It's not a fun secret. All right, I won't tell it. I mean, that was a joke that we just sort of. There was discussion because Emily's always right.
I am, except for this time. I did not think this joke should be in the movie, and Michael Showalter did not think this joke should be in the movie.
Yeah, Mike and Emily were like, this joke is too harsh, it's not gonna work. And I was like, I think it'll work because it really works in this situation. Also, I just thought it was such a funny joke. I was like, where else is this joke gonna go? I can't say that shit on stage.
We have joked that we wrote the entire movie so that Kumail could have a place for that awful joke.
It's a great joke. It's a yeah, and honestly, you know, so that joke, we actually Ray's brother, who's a retired New York cop, was on set, and when we were shooting that scene,
Retired NYPD cop.
Yeah, I had the wrong number of terrorists, and his brother was like, actually, that's not the right number. It's this.
No, that was funny because my brother was on. He's a retired cop, and after that joke, he came over and goes, "Hey Raymond, that joke," and I'm like, "Oh no." That, like maybe he was offended, but he goes, it's 19 terrorists, not 16. He's got it wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, we were like, oh, okay, thanks, dude.
We've done our research.
Yeah, 19.
I have to say, when I'm on an airplane now and I walk back, to go to the bathroom, then I'm coming back to my seat. If I see somebody's watching your movie, I will time it out so that I can go by their chair when that joke happens. So the guy next to them who's watching Schindler's List or whatever, the reaction when the person next to them just starts bursting out laughing is hilarious.
Oh,
So,
that's
lovely.
I mean, and shooting that scene was actually really fun. If I remember correctly, it was one of the first few days, and it was one of the first kind of fun scenes that the three of us got to shoot together.
Because we were shooting in the hospital first, so it was a lot of heavy shit.
Real heavy shit.
We started real heavy because just the reality, the schedule was we had the hospital the first week. So actually, one of the first scenes we shot was my goodbye with these two was one of the first scenes we shot together.
The first thing I shot was waking up.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
It was just how it worked out. So because that was in the hospital and it's in the cafeteria, that was one of the first fun scenes we got to shoot. And there was a lot of different versions of that scene, but we kind of were we think that the scripted one just felt right.
But is that true? We shot the goodbye first?
The goodbye was going to be the first scene we shot, and then I said, I requested, I told Barry, can we shoot that on day 2? And he said, okay, so it was day 2 that we shot our goodbye.
I didn't realize that was so early.
Yeah, you're a total pro, Holly. I'm terrified. I hadn't had my Stanislavski epiphany yet.
So a last question from me, and then I think we have 3 from the audience, is just what you guys have made of the last 11 months. This movie premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in January. It went over huge there, and let's just note, I don't know if, numbers, I just want to point out, this movie, one of the biggest sales in Sundance history, $12 million, 2 more than a movie last year Amazon got, which ended up with a Best Picture nomination, 1 Best Actor, 1 other thing. People loved this movie across the board, and the reviews reflect, I think you're behind only Get Out as 98%. It doesn't happen. So I just wonder, as this movie's rolled out, versus let's take it from going into Sundance versus coming out of Sundance, how did each of you kind of feel in those 2 moments?
Well, I mean, a festival offers an opportunity that you don't get anywhere else, and I I went to the Cannes Film Festival one year, and I was asked to be on the. I got to be on the jury, which was like so much fun because the lights would go down, and I wouldn't even know what the name of the movie was that I was going to see. It would just, the lights would go down, it would be like, oh my God, David Lynch, incredible. So that was really that. The festival offers this kind of virginal experience for the audience that you can never get again, never anywhere else. And so it was really fun because Sundance is kind of big and festive, and and it was
cold. It's cold.
It was cool. There's a youthful vibe at Sundance. It's kind of raucous. And it was such a revelation, really, because we'd seen the movie, and I really loved the movie, but it had a different life with that crowd. It was just a great coming out party.
For me, it was, Sundance. I've been to Sundance with a film that, listen, the reaction when we were there first night was like nothing I've ever seen. But I've been to Sundance with a film that kind of got that reaction, and you still knew this is a festival audience, and they're a little jazzed up. So you wait for the reviews to come out, and it didn't pan out. For me, when the reviews came, when the talk came of it, that's when it all felt, wow, I can't believe I'm on this thing, I'm on this train, And one of the reviews, I'm just going to tell you to keep it in perspective. One of the reviews said, Romano is stunning, and I'm only saying that because when my wife saw it, she said, they must have spelled stupid wrong. Yeah, not kidding. I'm not kidding you. So, thank God she keeps me,
Keeps you grounded.
Yeah, keeps me grounded.
These are the tricks to a 30-year marriage, I guess.
Yes.
I'm taking notes.
Where's my water?
I left before our premiere because I wanted to go to the Women's March in DC.
Mm-hmm. By the way.
And I felt very grateful because my producers understood completely and allowed me to do that. All the women in my family went to DC together. So there were from age 7 to age 80 in my family all together, which was amazing. But I landed in DC and opened up my Twitter and email and stuff and saw the reviews coming in and the audience reaction. So I got it third hand and then went and slept on an air mattress in my cousin's basement. So it was a good way for me to stay grounded in that moment. I think especially we brought it into the world on the day of the inauguration. That felt meaningful to me, not because this is a particularly political film, but because there is so much rhetoric that is being dog whistled and much more, and was at the time, about Muslim Americans and their experience in this country, and I just felt so happy to be putting something very good and golden into the world in a response to that. And I will just say, and I don't mean this as lip service, but what Ray said about the festival is one thing, and then it's not just the critical reaction, it's also the audience reaction, and we've been so embraced, and it's been so moving to me because I have so much love for these two people, to watch their vulnerability and generosity and sharing their story be reciprocated and embraced, and the world has met this movie and their story in such a beautiful way. And I have friends, older friends, who've gone it's 3 times or 5 times to the movies to see this, and obviously it means something in terms of the box office and people taking risks on other stories like this, but it also is just so gratifying as you guys as friends to see that happen.
I've never been to Sundance before. That was not something I'd done, so it was definitely a spectacle. And I think before the movie played, other than a few test audiences around Los Angeles, no one had ever seen the movie. So I thought, okay, I kind of think of our story, and especially I never really talked about being sick whatsoever, and so I kind of thought of that as being my this thing that belonged to me. And I thought, okay, well, this is when I'm giving that thing away. And I felt kind of apprehensive about it. And I think as we were walking from, and why am I getting emotional? I've done this a million times. As I walked from the first screening, which was amazing, to our premiere party, I had one actor in the movie who was in a small role, and 2 strangers come up to me and show me scars and tell me their stories. And I thought, okay, I'm giving all of this away, but I'm going to get so much back. And I think, I literally don't know why this is happening. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to kind of, to make something that you can give away and then get something back from audiences. And so I think that has been the most amazing experience and not something I expected. So.
Follow that, Kumail. Follow that.
That's why I was like, I'm sorry.
Jesus, can I get some fucking, can I get menthol? You know, it was really overwhelming, and we were actually sitting there. We were at the Eccles, which is like the huge 1,200-seat theater. And before it started, Emily was like, "This is the last time this is gonna be our story. This is gonna be," and I hadn't really thought about that at all. As Emily said, it was really overwhelming. It really kind of felt like, you know, we'd worked on this thing and we knew we were very proud of it, but in some ways the success of, you know, it's that weird, there's a weird disconnect. You want to make something, if you're writing something, you're in a way writing it for yourself, and you just want to be proud of it, and that's the only actual barometer for success you can have while making something. But then in some ways the way it's received does become part of the story of that piece of that thing that you made, you know. So you kind of want to be like, well, I made this, I'm proud of it, and nothing else really matters. But it ultimately does matter in practical ways, and also in other ways, in just the way that you see the thing you've made. In a way, you make something, and when you put it out, people's reaction to it changes how you see it too. So it was really overwhelming, and it was a wonderful to. I just remember having that feeling, sitting there and people laughing at jokes, and being like, "Oh, it was just really special and overwhelming." I mean, I don't know what else to say.
We'll give just a really...
It felt good AF.
Just to close this out in a rapid fire thing, just the first sentence or two that comes to your mind. I have some audience questions. First one is from Bree Curtis for Kumail and Emily. The movie is based off your true story. Is there anything in the film that is completely fabricated?
Yeah, in real life, Emily was never in a coma.
There we go. And we're back.
And in real life, I'm white, so there we go.
I'll tell you what wasn't true that I found out when Emily's mom watched a rough cut. This is Emily, courtesy of Emily telling me this. She said, "You know, Holly Hunter is prettier than me, but your father's much more handsomer than Ray Romano." Yeah. Right,
I'll say first, I didn't tell you that. Kumail did,
and
I
right.
tried to tell him not to.
Honestly, I couldn't wait.
She's got the hots for my dad. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Okay, next one is...
But what was it, though? I would say there's, you know, I mean, we really wrote the real thing, and then we worked with them, but even before they joined, we were like, let's make this a great movie. You know, it doesn't have to be our story.
The most fabricated thing is that Kumail and I never broke up in reality. We were very casual, and I was kind of not sure if this guy was into me or not. I couldn't tell. And so I went into a coma with a casual boyfriend and woke up with a guy who was like head over heels in love with me. So we thought, let's push that further. And let's make that, like, it's one thing to have your casual boyfriend at your bedside. It's another thing to have your recent ex-boyfriend at your bedside. So we kind of pushed that.
Next question is from Sophia and Norga for Ray and Holly. As people who have had so much success over a number of years in this business, what is the best piece of advice that you give to people who ask you for advice?
Wow. A lot of people ask me acting advice and how to get into the business, and that's where I have no answer because I came up through stand-up, so I don't know the channels. But I do know this. I believe it's the same because in stand-up, the way to get better was, yes, there are stand-up classes, believe it or not, as there are acting classes, but getting up and doing it was the best process, the best teacher. Your heart, you have to work through being not good, horrible, and just growing. And the only way to do it is the audience is the best teacher for us. So that's the only advice I can give is just do it wherever and whenever, and get into a movie with her. Yeah.
And I think I would have to follow Betty Davis's advice and just say, take Fountain.
That's my favorite.
And the last of the three is
Someone has to explain that to me. I'm too stupid to know what that is.
Fountain is a street in LA that's not as busy.
Take Fountain, right.
Although now it actually is, because
That
don't
quote,
take Fountain.
That quote now would be use Waze.
Yeah.
Okay, last question is for Kumail from Venkpachula. As a brown actor in this business, you're an inspiration to me, and can you explain how hard it was? Did you encounter, I'm paraphrasing a long question, but did you encounter resistance as being the brown lead of this movie, and any advice for me?
We have so much advice for you.
So what was your question?
Yeah. What were you really trying to say?
I'm a brown dude, and I'm trying to be an actor out here, and I love this movie, and I appreciate you pointing this out. My question is, I'm just curious how, when you're trying to sell this movie, was there any resistance? Because I've never seen a brown dude in a rom-com in the U.S.
Yeah. We were lucky in that for this specific thing, in that we had Judd, and as Zoe said earlier too. I mean, it's hard. It's hard for brown dudes, but it's also just hard to break into movies, And we were very lucky in that we had this special situation, and that Judd sort of decided to take a chance on us. So that really, really helped us out. I think with regards to representation in the industry, I've seen it change a lot since I first started auditioning. There's still a long way to go, but I saw it changing a lot. I saw Aziz in Parks and Rec, and Danny Pudi in Community, and and even before that, Kal Penn in Harold and Kumar. Just seeing brown people in different contexts is really important. So. I mean, but it's always gonna be harder for us, I think, because if you're going out for a movie where it's just a guy and he has parents, if they cast you, then they're going to a smaller pool for the parents as well. So, unfortunately, I think it's always going to be harder for us in Hollywood. But I think it's our job to try and. I don't think you have to have positive portrayals. I think you have to have complicated portrayals. I think that's the thing that we sort of have to focus on. That is, unfortunately, it's a little bit our responsibility. You just have to try and play parts where you're playing different types of characters and you're playing real complicated people. I feel like sometimes it gets interpreted as like, oh, if you're a person who's not that well represented, you have to play good people. I don't think that's right. I think you have to play interesting, complicated, different types of roles. I think that's what's important.
Amazing writing, amazing performances, amazing ensemble. So thank you all for coming out and letting us.
Thank you for having us.